Hi everyone, and welcome to the Target Jobs Solicitor Series of Part 1, where we'll be covering first year schemes, open days and campus ambassadors. This is a 3-part series, so if you want to register for Part 2 and 3, just scan these QR codes here. I will put these codes up at the end again, so don't worry. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions throughout this session. This is what our panelists are here for. They're here to answer all your queries, so just pop them in the questions tab. So on that note, I'm going to pass over to my colleague Maya.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to part 1 of the Target Jobs Solicitor series. Today we're joined with representatives from Osborne, Clarke and Clifford who will provide us with lots of top tips and tricks for successful applications to open days and insight schemes. We'll also discuss what to do when you're actually on the scheme, and then we'll open up the session for more questions from you guys. So quick intro to me and what on earth I'm doing here today. My name is Maya and I am currently the events assistant at Target Jobs and recently graduated from the University of Sheffield with a degree in law. After winning the Target Jobs Future Lawyer of the Year 2020, I accepted a training contract with a sponsor firm and will soon be starting my LPC. As a side note, the applications for the Future Lawyer of the Year 2022 are still open till Monday, and I'd really, really encourage you to all apply for it. It is a wonderful opportunity. At the end, we will be putting a slide up with some details about it and a link to apply. So look out for that at the end. And then separately, I've also done first year schemes and vacation schemes, and I don't mind answering any questions after the session. However, the real focus of today is our lovely panelists. I'm delighted to introduce Zoe from Osborne Clarke and Asha from Clifford. Starting with Zoe, could you please tell us a little bit about who you are and what your role is?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Maya. Hi, everyone. My name's Zoe. I'm the Graduate Recruitment Manager at Osborne Clarke. In terms of what I do day to day, I'm responsible for the recruitment and selection of all of our trainee solicitors, and that includes our first year programme, so our Insight scheme that runs throughout the Easter break, all of our vacation scheme programmes that run throughout the summer, and direct training contracts as well.
Okay, and Asha?
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's Asha Tikku, and I am the Graduate Recruitment Marketing Manager here at Clifford. Been with the firm for about 11 years and worked across all roles within the team. I look after actually, I've got a really interesting role that I look after a whole host of different things, but given we're talking about open days, one of the aspects I look after is our Clifford Live and on-demand event portfolio. Of course, today I'm here to talk to you about those, but also our incredible Spark scheme for first-year students. So, yeah, that's me.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, both. So to kick off then, can you tell us a little bit about what students can expect from the application process to your first-year schemes or open days or any other sort of related schemes that are kind of below the vacation scheme? We'll leave that for today. So Asha, do you want to start and talk us through what we can expect?
Yeah, sure. So it's a really interesting question for us because we've made a few bold changes in the last couple of years to our to access to our resources. So essentially 2 or 3 years ago we decided that one of the core pillars of our strategy would be around democratizing access to world-class resources and wherever possible removing barriers to the profession. And with the onset of COVID and working remotely, we made the decision to remove all application processes associated with any of our open days. So instead, we created a suite of, loads of different types of events. We do a whole YouTube video about it, so you can look it all up. But we offer a whole series of different events offering various insights into our culture, our firm, our people, our opportunities. And we also made a decision to invest really heavily in global virtual internships, which is an international program that gives candidates access to real work, so skill-based type tasks associated with being a trainee or a junior lawyer in the firm. We developed over 25 hours of modular content, again, open to everyone. So In terms of applying to any of our open days or coming along to any of that, we're now in the sort of position where all of that content is freely available to everyone. So we took all the content that would normally be on a vacation scheme or open day and sort of transformed it into this sort of virtual space, a virtual set of world-class resources. So we're really thrilled about that, and we've seen phenomenal engagement with that. People are, really enjoying accessing all of those sessions. There is the on-demand function as well, where you can watch sessions that have passed, so you can always go back and, if you want to find out about a particular practice area or watch a session on our gender parity group, or you want to find out a bit about our trainees and what they're actually doing, you can go back and watch all that content at your leisure. And there are over 30 events from this last season, and then I think the year before that we did in excess of 50 events. So there's just so much content. So that's really covering off our open days and sort of the vacation scheme type content. But then we have Spark, which is our last remaining sort of vacation scheme opportunity, which this year, so historically that's always been open to first year students. This year we opened it up to first year law students, second year law students of a 4-year course, and penultimate year non-law students. So there's a much broader demographic that we're after for that particular scheme. And that really consists of an online application via our website. On submitting an application, you're then invited to complete a Watson Glaser critical reasoning test, which is a sort of benchmark test. It's there's lots of practice tests out there. There's one on our website as well. That really it's just about sort of assessing how you handle data and anything around sort of critical reasoning and language and things like that. So you do that test. Should you pass that test, you then go through to a screening process. We then select the very best candidates to come through for an assessment day. And I call it an assessment day, but it's not really in this virtual world. It's sort of an assessment couple of hours. You are asked to come along and prepare for a case study. So you have sort of case study preparation time when you're asked to review some materials and write a written response to a business type scenario. And then there follows an interview with usually a partner and a senior associate from the business, where you get to talk about your findings in that case study, but also there's the competency aspect where we just talk about you as an individual and all the wonderful things you told us about you on the application form. So that's the process. Sorry, I've been very long-winded and taken up loads of time, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea as to how to sort of get hold of those resources I was talking about and what the application process looks like for Spark.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. I'm sure students find it useful just to have a complete breakdown of kind of all the opportunities available. So that's really useful. Thank you, Asha. Zoe, coming to you now. Can you tell us a little bit about Osborne Clarke's application process?
Yeah, of course. So for our Insight scheme, which, like Asha, is open to first year law students, second year of a 4-year law course, and second year non-law students, so basically anyone who's too early to apply for a place on the vacation scheme. We follow a similar process, so we have an online application form as well. Instead of the Watson Glaser, we use a verbal reasoning test at this stage. And our Insight scheme, we aim to offer as many places on that opportunity as we can. So it's just an application form and verbal reasoning test for us to get a place on the scheme. So hopefully something quite straightforward for people to navigate.
And there's no interview process?
No interview process for our Insight scheme, no. So we use our Insight scheme really to give people access to the profession. So we appreciate that even as a first year law student or a second year law student, you might not fully be able to grasp what life is like in a commercial law firm. So our Insight scheme really gives you that opportunity to engage with lawyers, to do tasks that lawyers are involved with day to day, so that you can really get an insight into what it's like to be within a commercial practice, and then decide if you want to go on and apply for a vacation scheme when you hit the right year.
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much, both. So when you're looking at these online applications, what says to you that a candidate has a genuine commitment to finding out more about commercial law, and kind of what shows a genuine enthusiasm? How does that come across in the applications when you're scanning them?
I don't mind taking.
You can start. Asha, yeah, do you want to go?
Okay, yeah. So we've kind of modelled the application to our training contract, to our Spark scheme, sort of around our training contract as well, because of course our Spark scheme can lead you to a training contract offer at the end of your first year, or at the end of the scheme, you are offered a training contract interview. So we've modelled it around the TC application form, and what's interesting about that is that the training contract application form, again, a couple of years ago, went through a massive transformation, and we stripped out a lot of those questions of, like, why our firm, and, why law, and, those sorts of questions, because we didn't really feel as recruiters that was allowing us to really get to the heart and center of each individual. People were spending lots of time sort of researching our website and marketing, regurgitating marketing speak, and not really actually telling us much that allowed us to differentiate between who's going to be an exceptional hire over the next. So we took all that out and actually made the form very focused around the achievements of individuals. And the Spark application form does exactly that. The questions on there are really asking about what drives you as an individual, what are you passionate about. There's the famous 600-word question that everyone panics about, where we ask about an achievement of importance, or something you can tell us about, or a few things you want to tell us about that really give us an idea of who you are and what drives you, and what kind of individual you are. And the purpose of that is, obviously it's a really competitive process, all of these applications to law firms. We really want people who have the right attitude and approach to the work and the environment. And we feel that by getting to the nitty-gritty of what you love to do and what makes you you, and what you've actually chosen to go and do in your life, that sort of makes you excited, so excited that that's what you're going to tell us about in your application form, that's going to give us more of an insight into whether or not you have those sort of characteristics, whether you're built in that way to be able to manage a career here. And so I think whenever I'm giving advice on how to approach the application form, it's genuinely about authenticity, aligning your strengths with what you perceive as the strengths you need to be a good lawyer, or someone who works well in a commercial environment. So you've got to put some thought into that. You've got to think a bit about, what does that job entail? What kinds of things do they like? Does that match up to what I like and what drives me? If it does, great, you should be applying. If it doesn't, then maybe you shouldn't. So, and then you'll naturally start sort of answering the questions in a really sort of empowering and positive and authentic and genuine way. And as seasoned recruiters, I'm sure Zoe will agree with me here, we can spot those people a mile off, because we get so many applications and we've read so many applications. We know straight away when we've got someone who's really genuinely telling us about themselves. And there's a vast amount of resource out there to help support you in how to do this right. I can only speak with chance today, but obviously we've got all of our podcasts. We've got candidates talking about what they've written in their applications forms to be successful. And just to give you a small example, there was a particular trainee that stands out for me, and I remember her application form. She wrote about being a helper in Santa's Grotto in her local community. Now, you might think, how on earth does that translate to a successful law firm application? She became a trainee on the basis of it. But essentially, it was something that she'd felt really passionate about within her community. It was a Santa's Grotto that had been running for years. It was always a bit run down. There wasn't much funding. No one was really going. But she knew that it was a community within which she'd grown up in, and she'd seen it as a little girl, then she'd gone off to uni, came back and thought, you know what, I can do something about this. And she got involved, started off as a helper, and ended up, taking it on leaps and bounds. It ended up in the national press as being one of the best grottos in London. So, it's little things that start off as a sort of like, oh, I don't know whether anyone will really be interested. And then when you actually start to tell the story, it can tell us so much about you, your drive, your passion, and all the rest of it. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting approach. And thank you for those lovely examples as well. I'm sure the students really appreciate that. So coming over to you, Zoe, how do you kind of approach kind of going through the applications? How do you decide what is genuine commitment?
So for us, we do have, a focus on people's appetite to come and work for the firm. So having done some research beyond just the marketing literature, we're well aware of how the firm is positioned externally. So try to, identify the bits of the firm or the organisation that really sit with your interests and motivations, and tell us why you want to come and be a part of Osborne Clarke. Linked to that as well, I would echo all of the points that Ash has made around motivation, passion and drive, and using those examples that perhaps you think are slightly off-piste, or you wouldn't necessarily include in an application form or think to, because it really is about identifying the things that you've done that have helped you get to where you are today, and why those things have helped you decide that a career as a commercial lawyer is the right course of action for you. And that doesn't mean that you need to have swathes of legal work experience on your CV. The only interaction you might have had with somebody in the law is talking to someone like us at a careers fair. So we don't expect you to have all of that legal work experience. So tell us about all of the other things that you've been involved with, either volunteering or community work or paid employment. Whatever it is that you've done that's helped you get to where you are today is really, really important to include in your application form. And that passion and that genuine interest really does jump off of the page when you're reviewing an application form. You can tell someone who's applied effort and time to their submission, so that really does pay off.
Oh, that's a brilliant point. And I think it's very relevant to our audience today as well, because obviously a lot of the people on this call will be first years, some may be second years. We might even have a few third years, but, there haven't been many opportunities to get that legal work experience, particularly not in the past 2 years. So all that sort of compulsory work experience you might have had to do in your year 13, that hasn't happened. So I think it would be really beneficial to students to know how to almost talk about their non-legal experiences and how they can utilize these. So I don't know if you've got any advice on that, Zoe.
Yeah, so I think, it's about breaking down each of the experiences into the things that you've learned and what you've developed over that time frame. So it might be that working in a bar as part of a team, or you've been managing cash flow or, profit and loss. There are lots of things that you learn day to day that perhaps you don't automatically think are skills that you've developed that are going to be relevant. But if you take some time to really sit down and digest what you've done and really focus on those transferable skills, more of it will come to light the more thought you put into it.
Yeah, that's great. Asha, have you got anything to add about that?
Yeah, I think, look, my view is that the world has changed a lot in the last 2 years, and therefore as recruiters we've had to also adapt what we identify as, people putting in or showcasing commitment to the industry or to our work. Obviously we know there's been a sort of, there's been no physical opportunities, but the world has really moved on in the technological space, and I would say that students now are pretty much spoilt for choice with the amount of internship opportunities and free resources, and and I'm talking specifically about the profession access, actually learning and digesting and understanding the profession. So look, of course there hasn't been the opportunity to go out into a firm or go to a business and be in that environment, but to a degree I feel recruiters' attitudes are also shifted with that change, in the sense that when I review an application now, in fact, we just finished our TC screening and we're doing our Spark screening actually, because the deadline is the 10th of Feb, don't forget. We are, I'm looking at people who are, completing those internships, who are desperate to take all the opportunity they can to learn about the profession where they're able to, are attending those Clifford Chance live events and other firm events, that have been hosted all over the place in the last 2 years. I want to see where people are channeling that interest and that eagerness to learn and commitment to getting all the knowledge they can for this admission application. I'm looking for the people who are doing that alongside the other bits and pieces that they're doing. So I think I think, you know, arguably, I think there is more work out there available for students to do than there were when there were physical opportunities. Because for us, you know, of course, open days are lovely. Vacation schemes are a jolly. We have a wonderful time. But in terms of actual meaningful work experience, obviously, you don't get the real flavour of that until you start working at the firm, right? So these modules of 25 hours plus content, you know, we also introduced our Ready Set Law work experience program, which is for sort of 16 to 18-year-olds, but absolutely available to everyone else. So that's more of an introduction to law. You know, these sorts of resources are amazing. And if you commit to them, you go back to them, and the fact that they're open and they're free and you can do them whenever you want, there's really no reason to not. So, yeah, so I think exactly as Zoe said, you know, all these other skills, you know, working in corner shops, you know, doing volunteer work, whatever it is that you're doing, where you can align all your skills, profit and loss, you know, taking on more responsibility. If you've been lucky enough to get some of that in the last couple of years, great. We definitely want to hear about it. But there's also that sort of wealth of content that will absolutely upskill you in ways that I don't think were ever available before. And you definitely benefit from doing those and talking about them in application forms.
No, that's brilliant. And yeah, everyone on this call today, I feel, is part of that audience. They are here to learn more about what it is to be a solicitor. Most of the people on this call will be taking their very, very first steps. And yes, I mean, this webinar itself wouldn't have existed 2 years ago. It is something that's come about because of the pandemic. So yes, I think that's a really good point, Asha. So I do want to move on and talk about what happens when you actually get onto an open day or an insight scheme. But the final question about the applications themselves is, what are the biggest stumbling blocks for aspiring solicitors at the written application stage? Zoe, do you want to start with this?
The most frequent one is, you know, just poor attention to detail, typos, forgetting which firms you're applying to, forgetting what. Well, I say that because I'm reviewing application forms at the moment, and you know, these are just the top things that, you know, there's nothing more disappointing than being really excited about an application form and then there being some horrendous typos towards the end of it. So for me, that's a really big thing, and it sounds really simple, and I'm sure candidates get really bored with recruiters like us saying all the time it's all about spelling, it's all about attention to detail, but it's such an important attribute of a lawyer and solicitor that, you know, I just can't not mention it. Sorry.
I'm completely with you there, Zoe. Absolutely. It's the grammar is vital. It's your first written submission to a law firm, and you know, if you can't get that right, things aren't looking good. So yeah, I completely echo that. I think for me, beyond the sort of attention to detail, quantifying your responsibility. So I think all your successes when you're telling us something, you know, people very quickly will choose examples where they're talking about we were able to do something, or we, you know, as part of this society, we did this. We're really interested in you. And I think things like, although this has been used to death, but the STAR technique, you know, situation, task, action, result, you know, it's a really good structure to help you relay in that written piece exactly what your role was in that particular exercise. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for summaries. We're looking for you to be able to articulate really clearly, either through metrics or however you measured your success, but we clearly want to understand your role. And so make sure when you're reflecting over the bits of experience you're going to include, that you feel really strongly about being able to clearly articulate your responsibilities. So that's important.
Okay, great. I mean, something I always did, well, when I was applying for first year schemes, vaccines, I sent my application to literally everybody. Like, I'd send it to my parents, my friends, people on LinkedIn that I knew would work for the company. I bothered everyone. But it's because those tiny details do matter, and you might not notice when you become so familiar with your own writing, you can't hear it in someone else's head, and it does really help just to get as many people as you can reading it, because they'll pick up on things that you just never would. But yeah, so that's just something that I did as well when I was applying. So moving on then, we have all followed Zoe and Ash's amazing advice. We've all done really well with our applications, and we've now made it to a first year scheme or an open day. What can students do to prepare and stand out from other students at these events, whether they are online or in person? Asha, would you like to start with this one?
Yeah, I think it's all about attitude. You know, when you come along to a scheme, it's really, you know, we need to see, you know, we want to feel your enthusiasm. We want to feel your willingness to learn. We want to feel your curiosity. You know, those are all the things that are going to be important when you are actually in the career. That's how you'll, you know, that's how our world-class lawyers operate. They have this curiosity, this willingness to learn, and this enthusiasm to want to find out more. But what I will say is, if you do get to that position where you have got a place on a scheme, you know, try not to worry too much about the sort of prep. You know, I think ultimately you're coming on, especially with ours, as is a first year scheme. You know, we don't do the traditional VAC schemes, but with the first year scheme, you know, it's about coming along with an open mind, a willingness to engage and participate. You know, we don't expect you to be experts. We want you to come along and really soak up every minute. The schemes are jam-packed with information. You'll be exhausted by the end of each day. And on top of that, there's all the socials that happen as well. So you've got to, you know, be ready for all that. So I'd say if you make it onto a scheme, you've done really, really, really well. You should be exceptionally proud of yourself. And I think come to that scheme just ready to enjoy yourself, ready to learn, ready to listen, ready to participate, and really make the most of the opportunity. And of course, remember what you're there for. You're there to sort of for peer-to-peer engagement, to meet other people, like-minded individuals. You're there to learn about the firm and work out whether this is the right place for you. You're there to understand what all the opportunities are and how they present themselves. Ask all your questions, and you know, and don't be afraid to seize every opportunity, basically. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's a great message. Zoe, would you like to add anything to that?
No. Asha covered it all really well. When you said curiosity, I was like, oh, she's pinched my word.
Sorry.
So
yeah.
Oh, no. It's you know, and I think it's good for, you know, the people listening to see that, you know, we are essentially looking for the same things in people. It's just, you know, the opportunities for candidates to come along, to be curious, to have their questions answered, to really get stuck in and really find the right firm for them. Because that's what these processes are all about, you know, it is finding the right fit for you, finding the right structure, the right organization where you can start your career and go on and have a long and successful career. So, you know, I think it's good for students to hear that we're all looking for the same thing.
Yeah, that's great. And that very nicely leads on to my next question, about what are the key questions that students should be asking when, you know, either attending a scheme or an open day, or even just tuning into an Instagram live Q&A session. What is it that they should be taking out from this? Because I mean, I'm aware that you could kind of go to a scheme, or you could watch a live video, or even, you know, you could attend the Target Jobs Solicitor series and you could watch it, but it doesn't mean you then get anything from it. How can students make sure they are getting kind of, or utilizing these opportunities the best way they can?
Oh, yeah, I don't mind taking it.
Yeah, Asha?
It's an interesting question. I guess it depends on the individual and what they want to know. You know, I think there is so much information. Okay, that's why we're all suffering from virtual fatigue. I can barely keep my eyes open when it gets to like 2:00 after, you know, all the Zoom meetings. So I think you know, I think when you are going, I think what might be helpful is before you, like I used to say this to students when we were doing physical events, you know, before you go to a law fair, for example, I'd always say, you know, students say to me, you know, what, you know, don't really know what to do. Got to go to the law fair, going to go from stand to stand. What do I do? And I always used to say, well, spend a few minutes before really thinking about what you don't know and what you really, really want to find out. And that could be a really simple question, things you've been afraid to ask, things that think, oh, it's going to make me look silly. But you mustn't forget that everyone is putting on these sessions because they're desperate to share knowledge. They just want to tell you as much as they can. That's why they've committed the time. That's why they're on the panel. That's why they've shown up. So I think, you know, before you attend any event, before you're coming on to any seminar, before you decide you're going to go and watch something, do a few minutes of just preparing. You know, what is it I don't know? Where do I feel less secure? What is it I know I'm interested in this business. I know I want to give it a go, but where am I a bit fluffy? Is it around commercial awareness? Am I not too sure about what the topic they're discussing? Does it feel a bit too much for me to digest? Do I ask them about how do I break this down? Where can I go for more resources? These are experts in the field. Their job is to explain really complex things in really simple ways, because not every client is going to have all the legal terminology and going to understand the intricacies of business. So lawyers are some of the best people to talk to about how to break down, the most complex things. And I know I do appreciate that takes a level of confidence. But again, we're in this beautiful hybrid world where you can use a chat. You don't have to come on video. You can pop it in the chat, or you can drop an email, or you can, there are so many modes of getting it. But I think having a sense of self-awareness, where your weaknesses are, what it is you need from that particular session that you're going to, what do I need to take away from it? And it might even happen sort of post-event. You might reflect on the event and go, oh, that was really interesting. I love the people. I got a real sense of what they were like, but I got lost on this bit, or I wasn't sure about. That might all happen afterwards. So then, make a note, come back to it, jot down the people, reach out to the grad team. I think a little bit of preparation from each of those sessions would help. And I think it really does depend on what the individual is looking to get out of each session. I hope that answers the question.
No, it definitely does. Thank you. Zoe, how do you think that students can kind of best utilise all these opportunities that are now available?
Yeah, I think, like Asha said, it's thinking about what your motivations are for attending that session. What do you want to learn and take out of going along, committing an hour or so of your time to it, because there's nothing worse than going to an event and then coming away and feeling like it was a waste of time. So making sure that you've got what you needed out of it as well. And it might be that as part of your preparation that you've researched into the speakers and found out more about their practice areas or their areas of specialism, and even gone as far as preparing perhaps a few questions just so that you've got them in your back pocket, so that when you go into the networking session that you can, you're empowered because you've done some research and you've got those prepared questions in your armory, and you can then seek out the right people to make sure that you get those questions answered at the end of the session. So yeah, probably preparation is key, and identifying what your motivations are, what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, and I'd also say, obviously, with us, with Clifford Chance, with our events, we have got on demand now. So what that means, you can go back and watch at your leisure. So if you've watched something and you've not been too sure, and you just want to sort of go back, you can always, now a lot of the resources you can access and in different ways, and go back and rewatch it and do a bit of research and, use it as an actual key piece of resource, research piece, which I think is quite good.
Yeah. As a reminder, this webinar is also on demand and can be watched back at any time.
We're all on demanding.
Yeah. So kind of moving on to the last formal question then. One thing that should be acknowledged is that these opportunities are, for many, the first time they'll have entered a professional setting, and certainly a professional legal setting. So could you outline some kind of basic etiquette roles? So this could be either for in-line or in person, and even maybe talk about dress code requirements, just because I think this is something that can cause anxiety amongst students, but they're not necessarily, it's not something they would like email and ask about, because they might just feel a bit just kind of conscious of it. But I think etiquette is something that should be maybe discussed more openly. So I don't know if, Zoe, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I suppose in terms of that, we would want people to make sure, again, that they're getting everything that they want out of the session. So make sure that, you've done some preparation, you've thought about the kinds of questions that you want to to get answered. I suppose in terms of etiquette, a lot of the virtual sessions that we run are run through Teams, and we often make sure that our speakers outline what the etiquette of the session is. So, you know, if you've got a question, pop it in the chat or raise your hand, trying to make things interactive. So taking the speaker's lead in virtual events is really important. So I know we're always rushing to get between sessions when you're on these kind of virtual placements, but really listen to the first 5 minutes of the session so that you know exactly what's going to be expected of you throughout and how you can then best respond and make sure, you know, there's nothing worse than halfway through thinking, crikey, was I supposed to raise my hand at this point, or how do I ask a question? I'm feeling that anxiety about asking that question. So, you know, pay attention at the beginning to make sure that you've got everything that you need to get through it. On the dress code, we would always send out a dress code advice note before any of our sessions, just so that students feel that, you know, they're not going to be over or underdressed. I mean, as a firm, we're quite casual and have a dress for the day policy. So I've run sessions before where you've had speakers in t-shirts rather than, you know, a formal suit. And I think sometimes students feel that that's slightly unsettling as well when you've got a speaker in slightly more casual wear. So just making sure that everyone who's coming along knows what to expect from us and what we expect from them as well.
Yeah, I would completely echo everything Zoe's just said. Yeah, I think, you know, online etiquette, I think, is quite different to physical etiquette. I think, obviously, when we're all online, you know, you can't see that I'm wearing pajama bottoms underneath this rather smart looking top, but, you know, and I'm in the office today. So, you know, it's, I guess at the end of the day, it's about, yeah, making sure, you know, you on the technical side everything's working and that, you know, you haven't got mad sounds in the background and you're muting if you've got your sister running and screaming and your dog's barking, and, you know, making sure, like you would in any live event, you know, you're an engaged you know, member of the audience, and that you're actually sort of, you know, doing all those sort of standard things. Dress code for us online, again, we haven't really ever had too many issues. People generally just tend to come comfortable. We've had all different sorts of people coming from, they're at uni at a lecture, or they've just finished a sports thing and they're just coming online in their sports gear. So we've never sort of worried about that too much. I think when you're in person, it's a different sort of thing, I think. And also, again, we anticipate that people have got different levels of confidence. You'll get people that will come into sessions, you know, will shake someone's hand, a speaker's hand after it's finished, and introduce themselves and make sure they're known to that person before they leave. Others might not, but as long as you are, if you want to be noticed, if the question is how do I sort of, you know, what's the etiquette in terms of like how do I get myself sort of in the line of vision of someone that's presenting, ask questions, be engaged, you know, be an engaged person throughout, show that you've listened, make notes throughout the talk that you can then build your questions around. And when you're in person, I think that plays out more. But you also wouldn't be penalized if you didn't do that, as long as you are sort of, you know, again, just sort of there, you know, engaged, watching, listening, and making the most of it. And yeah, behaving professionally, yes, it's a different world. I mean, you know, we've all got to be honest about it. You know, who you are at the weekend with your friends and who you are in the office when you walk through a big corporate giant. They are two different worlds. They require, to a degree, different sets of holding yourself. That doesn't mean you lose any of your authentic self, but you just have an awareness of how you carry yourself in those environments. And I think we'd all be lying if we said, yeah, you know, just come in and, you know, be your Saturday night person in you know, on a Monday morning in a corporate office. You know, that's just not how it is. But you can still maintain aspects of your authenticity, but, you know, within the parameters of where you are. So I just think it's just having self-awareness, and if you're coming to an event, being engaged, and I think you'll do fine.
All right. Well, both really useful answers. Thank you very much. I think we're going to end it with the formal questions now, because I'm just conscious that obviously students have a lot of questions. I've seen them popping throughout the last 40 minutes. So we've got lots of questions. I will start with some more general ones that you can both answer. There are a few firm-specific questions as well. So one student has asked, if we engage with your open resources, is it a good thing to add to our CVs and applications?
I would say yes. You know, if you're applying to us, I think yes. Especially if it's something you've definitely learned something from and that has resonated with you. It's not just about listing them off, because obviously there isn't, you know, there's no point in just saying, oh yeah, I've done this, this, and this. I mean, if I think what I would do is be selective and really think about the ones where you've actually learned the most or engaged with the most, and you know, I've definitely taken away something about the business and it's resonated with you. But yeah, I would say for us, do mention them.
And is that the same for you, Zoe?
As I say, I think context is key. You know, what I see a lot of people doing is listing them under a heading in the work experience section, so that you can show that you've done that, so that you've engaged with the firm or done some wider research into the profession. Sometimes it's not about shoehorning something in because you think that it needs to be said. It's all about relevance and context. So if it sits naturally within one of the competencies, then go for it, but don't try to squeeze it in because you think that you should be including them. There are other places for you to put that kind of information, either as a supplementary or as a work experience piece. So yeah, context is key, I think.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Everyone's favorite buzzword, commercial awareness, has come up in the questions. This student asks, how is one's commercial awareness measured? I'm sure you probably have different approaches to this. So Asha, can I start with you?
Yeah. So for us, all of that is pretty much confined to the interview. So we don't really we don't ask any questions about that on the application form. When you get to interview, it's the case study aspect is where we're really sort of drilling into your commercial awareness, and that will be in the documents that you're reviewing in the actual case study prep and what issues that they throw up, and your ability to be able to write something off the back of that case study, but also how you're able to then turn that into sort of conversation in the actual interview itself and talk more broadly around the topics that are affecting our business and our clients. So yeah, that's how we test it.
Yeah, so on our first year application form, we do have a question that's focused around what you're interested in the business and commercial space. So to get you to talk about a topic that you find really interesting, and it's about, you know, showcasing that you have an interest first and foremost in the business and legal world, and that you understand what a lawyer's role is within that particular situation. So really just, you know, drilling down into the detail of the particular issue that you find interesting, and appreciating a law firm's position within that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, both of you. So there's a few questions about eligibility surrounding first year schemes. They both seem to be in a similar boat, that they're both doing PGDLs. They're asking, do first year students of a 2-year conversion course qualify for the first year schemes? And would someone in the first year of the PGDL, having already obtained an undergraduate degree, count as a first year student?
If you've already got an undergraduate degree, probably not, but I will caveat that with, it's tricky because we don't see too many of those styles of application, but if people do, we would always weigh it up based on the quality of that application rather than just saying, oh, they're not in the pool, you know. So it's it's tricky because we would imagine that people that are at that point are probably, or should really be thinking about training contract. We definitely think at that point you should have probably amassed enough of the skill sets to be able to put together a successful training contract application. And I would rather those people called us to speak to us about it than putting in all that time on a Spark application. then which I can't obviously guarantee anyone's application goes through, but if we do have the specific groups that it's targeted at. So it's tricky, because I would rather speak to those people before they put in an application. But if you did, it would be benchmarked and assessed against the quality of that candidate pool that has come in for in general.
And for us, unfortunately, because I say unfortunately, we have a summer vacation scheme program that is for anyone that is eligible to start training with the firm in 2 years' time, and we recruit our trainee solicitors predominantly through a vacation scheme. So the insight scheme is really to give people an insight into commercial law, and as Asha said, by the time you get to kind of GDL or having graduated, we would expect you to be going through the vacation scheme program rather than applying for insight programs. So you'd need to apply through that vacation scheme route rather than the insight scheme.
Great, thank you very much. So I've got a student asking, what advice would you give someone who's interested in law but is on a different degree path? Well, obviously, apart from attending first year schemes and open days, Asha, can you provide some advice for what someone can do in this situation?
Well, we massively embrace law and non-law students. Our recruitment figures have always been 50-50 since I started at the firm, 50% law students, 50% non-law students. It isn't about the degree, it's about the attributes. It's about the attitude. It's about your enthusiasm and interest in what we do. So if you are someone who is studying a non-law subject and feels like they just want to get a bit more insight, you're probably in a similar boat to someone who's doing a law degree as well, because they're quite far removed from the job you're actually going to do day to day. The law degree I'm talking about, but not that it isn't useful, but it is far removed. So I'd say do exactly what everyone else is doing. Attend the sessions, try and get yourself on schemes that are relevant to you. There are so many opportunities as a non-law student. All our competitor firms do the same opportunities, law for non-law, all those different events that go on campus. If you're on campus, just seize all those opportunities and get your knowledge up around the industry and the profession. And that's the best way to approach it.
Yeah, get stuck in, sign up to events. For us, we don't specify law, non-law, or put a label on any of our events. They're open to everybody regardless. So yeah, just sign up and get involved, come along and have a chat.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. Speaking as someone who did a law degree, I'm not sure it's been particularly useful in terms of...
I don't want anyone going away thinking that I've said their law degrees are useful, because they really are, but it's just, it's not a deal breaker.
No. Well, I mean, also, across universities or even personal choice, your law degree could look very different. So for me, I did a lot of kind of more like political and historical modules. I sort of stepped away from like the commercial stuff, but someone else may have done a really sort of commercial, equity, land, all that kind of thing, which wasn't really to my taste. But yeah, so I don't think having a law degree really puts you at any great advantage. Actually, you might be far more interesting if you haven't done a law degree. So
I think, look, the key to it is you just want to do as well as you possibly can in your degree. So you pick one that you really, really want to do, because what people are interested in is how well you've done and how you've been able to cope with it. And that if you go and do a degree that you're not that interested in, then that's never a good thing. So yeah, whatever you do, just do it really well.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. So another student has asked, as a first year student, how are you supposed to grasp an idea of what type of law you want to expertise in? How can students decide an area if you've not had the experience?
But we're not expecting first year students to come into us knowing exactly what they want to do. And actually, I used to look after the seat rotations for our trainees. Quite often, you'd still be having the same conversation with second and third seat trainees about what they wanted to do with the rest of their career. So we're not expecting you to come in and have all of the answers. But what you do need to do is be open to new experiences, open to, finding out more about different areas of law. and getting stuck in, using that curious word again, asking lots of questions, trying to get some experience in different areas or exposure to different areas of law, so that you can have a think about, the different styles, the different clients. There are some that are very fast-paced and pressured. There are some that are more technical in nature, and trying to find out more about what's going to suit you and the way that you like to work is going to be really key, but it doesn't happen overnight. So just to put your minds at rest, we don't expect you to know from day dot what you want to do.
Yes, and I echo that completely. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also echo that, to be honest. So someone is asking about the online psychometric tests and how to prepare for them. So I think Clifford, Chance, you do Watson Glaser critical reasoning. Osborne, Clarke, you do verbal reasoning. So could you talk a little bit about that and how students can prepare?
Sure. There's no magic. I can't give you any magic answer other than to practice. That's it. It's the same with the Watson Glaser. It's the same test every time. If you can do the practice tests, like I said, there's one on our website, and I know there's a wealth of free online practice tests out there. I just think, a lot of the time, I think students just get really worked up and panicked about the whole setup of it as well. And I think if you can just practice being in that environment, like self-testing somewhere quiet, make sure, you've made a space for yourself to just concentrate on the questions at hand. If you can do that as many times as you possibly can before taking the actual thing, you'll sort of start to slip into a sort of rhythm and a sort of mindset as to how you're going to approach the actual thing. Of course, you'll be more nervous when the real thing's happening, but at least you will be, you won't be freaked out by timings or, how long you've got for each question and, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't have any great answer other than practice, and make sure you are somewhere very calm and quiet and undisturbed, and your tech is working beautifully, and you've tested it a million times, and you've got a glass of water, and you've been to the loo, and that's all happened on the day. But I don't know, maybe Zoe might have something more to add there.
No, I think you're right. Practice really is key, because in my experience, people panic about the test, and that if you haven't practiced, you're not familiar with the style. And if you're going into your actual sit having not been familiar with what's going to happen, that can really throw people off kilter. So that practice is absolutely key to make sure that you're really comfortable going into the actual sitting of the test. So yeah, practice, as Asha said.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. I think we only have time for really a couple more questions now. There's a couple of practical questions here. So this person is an international student studying law in the UK, but they're worried about applying to UK law firms. Is there any advice you can give them in terms of employability and right to work or visa requirements, anything like that?
Well, I always answer these questions by direct, because obviously everyone's situation is very unique and very different. And I would always say, if you want to know how it works and what your options are, I would always talk to the SRA first, who can advise on so many aspects of your unique situation. But generally, we accept applications from international students. Obviously, if we're talking about Spark here, if you're an international first-year student or you fit any of the criteria, second year of a 4-year course or a penultimate year non-law student, we would welcome your application. But if you're thinking more along the lines of training contract and sort of your eligibility to work, if you're someone who's had previous experience or anything like that, I definitely talk to the SRA, and then I definitely get in touch with us as a team to talk to us about your individual circumstance. But if you're an international student who meets the criteria of the scheme you're applying to or opportunity you're applying to, then we welcome your application.
Same.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. So there's a few questions kind of asking for comparisons between your two schemes, and that seems a little unfair. But could you give us one sentence about what makes your scheme so great?
Wow, one sentence.
Can be two.
Oh gosh, don't. I need a limit. Zoe, I'm happy for you to go first on that.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
It is a really tricky one. It's a really tricky one. But I think if you do your research, have a look into, firms, you'll find we're both commercial firms, corporate firms, but are very different beasts. Clifford Chance is a massive global organisation, and whilst we are a global firm, we're not as big as Clifford Chance, so we are quite different in that sense. So I think it's important for candidates to do some research into the kind of firms that they want exposure to before committing to training contract applications. And any experience that you get is absolutely worthwhile, be it from a commercial firm like one of ours, or a high street solicitors, whatever it is. It's important in your first year to try and get as much experience as you can. So have a Google search, see what placements are out there, see what schemes are out there, and get involved as much as you can, because that information will only help you then to narrow down the kinds of firms that you want to apply to train at.
Yeah, completely agree with Zoe. I think our scheme is, it really is, it offers you an unparalleled insight into our people, our culture, and our work. And I think it's a brilliant scheme to do if you're someone that is really serious about a career in commercial law, and you are now. And I think that's, maybe that's one of the differences between what Zoe's offering is and what ours is. Ours is really targeting those people that we've met we know you're out there, that are really sure that they want a career in a commercial environment, and they want a career that's connected to the law, because this scheme does lead to a training contract opportunity. So that's why the application process is that bit tougher than, say, one of our sort of, going back a few years, say one of our older schemes. So I think, yeah, you do need to be sort of committed and really interested in going the whole way. And I know that seems early, but it has worked. We are attracting those types of individuals. And so, yeah, and I think it's really an opportunity to really meet other like-minded individuals. One of the strongest things that comes out of our schemes is that sort of peer-to-peer relationship, and the camaraderie, and the wonderful friendships and relationships that come out of the candidates that end up on the scheme. So yeah, a lot to think about, weigh up what it is you want to get out of it and apply to the right one. But as Zoe said earlier, just get stuck in.
Yeah, and I think that is a really good positive message to close on. Before we go, are there any deadlines that you'd like the students to be aware of?
So for us, our first year programme deadline is the end of February, so there's still plenty of time to submit an application if you want to apply for an insight scheme placement at Osborne Clarke.
Yeah, and I plugged mine cheekily earlier, but 10th of Feb for us is the closing date for Spark, so only just under a couple of weeks to go.
Okay, so lots of applications to be getting on with. We've also got our Future Lawyer of the Year award deadline on Monday at midday. So obviously I'd encourage all the students on here to apply if you are eligible. It is open to penultimate and final year students. But yeah, so that's a really good opportunity as well.
And also, I know that you mentioned earlier that you might mention it, but there's also Undergraduate of the Year, which closes on the 31st of January. We are sponsoring 2 awards in that, and both of which can lead to work experience opportunities. So Young Activist of the Year is open to year 13 students and above. Lovely, there's a slide. And LGBT Undergraduate of the Year is obviously open to the LGBT plus community. So that's the 31st of Jan. Quite a lengthy application process, but the prizes are phenomenal. So I would say, if you're interested in getting any kind of work experience with us, I'd do it anyway. It doesn't in any way affect any applications that you submit. So a great opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely do it. Someone's going to win. Why not? Yeah, so there's the Future Lawyer as well. But yeah, looks like everyone's got lots of applications to be doing before the end of February. So best of luck with all the students who are applying. And thank you very much to Asha and Zoe for speaking with us today. You have been amazing. I've enjoyed this webinar, and I hope everyone else has too. Ash and Zoe, feel free to stay on after this, or you can head off if you've got other things to do at the moment. But yeah, so thank you very much to everyone who's joined us today, and I look forward to seeing you all in part 2 and part 3. Take care, everyone.